Need your Estigayan, Michelle.
Jogago Nui.
Are we doing anything this evening?
What you got in mind, Nosame?
Nemetsuna. I don't know. Maybe we can watch a movie.
Well, I do have this movie about the Trail of Death you keep asking me about.
Whoa, cool.
Can up, Nui. Can up.
I made us some popcorn for the show.
Miigwech the cop cow soyak.
No problem, Gramps.
I only have this movie on an old reel-to-reel.
Benowi Godanishna Bekka Dawat Ibawech Mokek Beshoch Jigberko Kichika. Goda Tojibwa Hudawa Minapode Wadmik Got Bamazja Gayawat. Ojibwa Coabjigewat Mindo Kazwanen. Mino Dawa Coabjigewat Dawawan. Minabode Wadmi Coabjigewat Oda Shkode. Shkodansi ej nakazot odoshkode. Gomsa gishpen jayak amajishnawat bodewad ke bodwayak oda shkode. Piskan nam get megwajna bidak de. Jayak nishnabek nukmakshna edayak. Oda get de yatsokan manan.
Potawatomi villages centered around a communal birch bark longhouse and several family longhouses, as well as wigwams. They grew corn, beans, and squash, and gathered wild rice, nuts, roots, and berries. They gathered maple sap from sugar maple and black sugar maple trees. They also hunted deer, bear, and buffalo, and were well known for their skill at making birch bark canoes, which they used to travel all of Lake Michigan and its tributaries. In those waters, they caught an abundance of fish and waterfowl. The Potawatomi were organized into a system of bands and clans, a patrilineal society in which children belonged to the same clan as their father. They had migrated from southern Michigan with the eruption of the Beaver Wars in the 1640s, and well-established Potawatomi villages were scattered throughout the Great Lakes region in the early 17th century when French explorer Jean Nicolet landed on the shores of Green Bay, Wisconsin, and documented the first account of European contact. At the height of the fur trading era, the Potawatomi controlled a tribal estate of over 500 million acres, encompassing Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, and a portion of Ohio. By the mid-17th century, the Potawatomi were well known among the French along the St. Lawrence River, with whom they'd established fur trading relations. European contact quickly ushered in sickness and war, and an insatiable appetite for Indian lands led to a chain of events that would change forever the lives of the Potawatomi. By the early 1800s, the lives of many Potawatomi and French-Canadian fur traders had become intertwined, defining the beginning of an era in which the blood of both coursed through the veins of an expanding generation that would use their education, linguistic skills, and their ability to move freely between both worlds. These Potawatomi would navigate the turbulent waters of the tidal wave of western expansion that would ultimately carry the Potawatomi far away from their homelands. Abel C. Pepper, superintendent, and other immigration officials held a council at Menominey's Reserve July 17 and 18. Pepper warned that their refusal to remove would be a clear violation of the treaty obligation entered into with the president, and would oblige the use of force against them.
Members of the Council, the President does not know the truth. He, like me, has been imposed upon. He does not know that your treaty is a lie and that I never signed it. He does not know that you made my young chiefs drunk and got their consent, and pretended to get mine. He does not know that I have refused to sell my lands, and still refuse. He would not by force drive me from my home, the graves of my tribe and my children who have gone to the Great Spirit, nor allow you to tell me your braves will take me, tied like a dog, if he knew the truth. My brothers, the President is just, but he listens to the word of the young chiefs who have lied. And when he knows the truth, he will leave me to my own. I have not sold my lands. I will not sell them. I have not signed any treaty and will not sign any.
On August 5th, Pepper held a council with the Potawatomi. Soon after, settlers began pouring into the reserve, claiming preemption rights. They settled on almost every quarter section on which the Potawatomi still lived. Trouble arose. Immigration officials sent for former Indian agent John Tipton to help persuade the Potawatomi to leave. Tipton attended a council near Plymouth, but was unsuccessful in breaking down the chief's opposition.
Every officer and soldier will do his duty promptly and diligently. No violence will be offered to the poor deluded Potawatomis unless they resort to open hostilities and shed blood. We must compel them to a proper observance of the treaties they have entered into with the United States and protect our citizens from difficulty with the Indians peaceably, if we can, forcibly, if we must.
They were completely shocked and surprised when the militia rushed in and surrounded them. They were held prisoner, not allowed to leave or separate. The next day, another council was held. Menominee, Black Wolf, or Mokade Mo'oa, and Pipinoa still declined removing. These chiefs and one other, Notoke, were imprisoned in the chapel. On August 27, 1838, Governor David Wallace appointed Tipton to organize a volunteer company to remove the Potawatomi Indians from Indiana to lands in Kansas. Tipton had obtained the appointment of William Polk as the federal conductor.
I made it known to the militia of Cass and Miami counties the volunteers would be accepted and directed to march by squads en route to this place. I shall proceed north at 2 o'clock tomorrow morning. Organize and execute your orders with as little delay as possible.
General Tipton sent a letter to Father Pettit at South Bend, dated September 2nd, asking him to help persuade the dissentients to remove peacefully. He again promised that the government would pay for the expenses of the emigration, give each Potawatomi a half section of land, and provide for their support for 1 year. He also promised to recommend to the President that funds be provided for a chapel and house for Pettit and any other priest.
I am under the dependence of my bishop and at his disposal, as much as at least as any soldier of your troops is at your disposal. I received a full denial of my request. I must not think any more of going west.
Tipton continued as quickly as possible in gathering and imprisoning all the Indians he could find in the area. His soldiers gathered over 700 by the evening of September 2nd. By the morning of September 4th, the militia had rounded up well over 800 Potawatomi from the area. They marched a distance of 21 miles on their first day to the village of Chipaway on the Tippecanoe River, which they reached by sunset. At the conclusion of the second day's journey, 9 miles traveled, the Potawatomi reached Mud Creek in Fulton County. Water was scarce. The first death occurred. A baby died. By the time they reached Logansport on the afternoon of the 6th, the caravan had traveled 17 miles. They were forced to camp for a few days in order to procure wagons. They stayed there for 3 days. When they left Logansport on September 10th, they left 54 sick behind. Several died and were buried there. The caravan moved along the north side of the Wabash River, passing through present-day Pittsburgh, Battle Ground, Lafayette, and Williamsport, with 2 or more deaths occurring nearly every day. The procession, according to the Delphi Oracle, September 15, 1838, was nearly 3 miles long.
Our trip is a harsh experience. We have much sickness. 2 of the Indians were buried today.
We soon found ourselves on the grand prairies of Illinois, under a burning sun and without shade from one camp to another. Not a drop of water can be found there. It was veritable torture for our poor sick, some of whom died each day from weakness and fatigue.
On Sunday, November 4th, 2 hours were spent for worship at the Bulltown encampment, now very close to their new homes. By 2 p.m., they crossed the Osage River, where the Indians were met and welcomed by many of their friends, and at half after 3, reached Pottawatomie Creek, Osawatomie, Kansas, the end of the destination. Distance traveled today, 20 miles. 859 Pottawatomie Indians were rounded up and forced to walk a 2-month journey of 660 miles across 3 states and into a 4th. More than 40 died, mostly children, of typhoid fever and the stress of the forced removal. Their young priest, who so tenderly cared for them, also became very ill and died on February 10, 1839, in St. Louis. 756 Pottawatomie Indians arrived in Kansas. However, some did manage to escape along the way. Upon arrival, there were no cabins as the government had promised, but the Pottawatomie persevered. The Pottawatomie of the Wabash, the Mission Pottawatomie, settled between the north and south forks of the Big Sugar Creek in southeastern Kansas. Although it would take years, the Pottawatomie would adjust to their environment and begin again to reestablish themselves. They built their homes and their church and planted their crops. In 1846, after much pressure from the government and those surrounding them, the Pottawatomie signed a treaty agreeing to move to a 30-square-mile reservation in North Kansas near Topeka. With the passage of the Kansas-Nebraska Act in 1854, it became clear that American expansion would continue westward despite treaty agreements. The rush of settlers into the area virtually erased the borders of Indian reserves. In just 6 years after the organization of the territory, over 100,000 Americans entered the lands west of the Missouri state line. Much of the allotted land quickly passed from the Pottawatomie allottees into the hands of white settlers, traders, land companies, and railroads, creating huge losses. In addition to allotments assigned with the 1861 treaty, the Mission Band Pottawatomie also took U.S. citizenship and became the Citizen Band of Pottawatomie. In 1867, the Citizen Band signed the final treaty agreeing to move south to Indian Territory, now known as Oklahoma. Pottawatomie families moved at their own expense to Indian Territory, traveling separately as individual families and some in groups. Finally, establishing their homes around the Canadian River in what is now known as Potawatomi County, Shawnee, Oklahoma. The citizen Potawatomi Nation continues to grow at an historical pace. We have, and we will continue to persevere.
Cool movie, Grandpa. That's crazy how our people got rounded up and forced to move.
Yeah, our word for a white person was chimokman, which means long knife, because a lot of our early contact was either with priests or soldiers. The soldiers would have a saber on their rifles. There were actually several different occasions where our people got rounded up and forced to move.
I thought the treaties we signed protected our rights.
Yeah, they should have, but the government never honored those treaties. They kept wanting more of our land and kept pushing us further away from our homelands.
How many treaties did we sign, Grandpa?
Over 40 treaties with the U.S., a couple with France, and a couple with England. We were the most treatied tribe in U.S. history.
The government broke all those? They don't talk about that in school.
Yeah, Nui, the only promise they kept was they promised to take our land, and they did. Well, it's getting late, Nui. You got school tomorrow.
You want me to help you clean up, Misho?
Miigwech, Nui. I got it this time.
Mamamina, Misho.
Ama Amina, Nui. Get to bonding.
Get to bonin.